Damn it! I did it again.
It's all right.
Okay. Never mind, folks. You're going to have to wait till Thursday for that one because today is not yapping with me. It's something else altogether, completely different. Maybe even better. I don't know. I'm sure it's better. And I can't even find it now. What the hell did I do with this thing?
Well, do you want to just start?
No. Let me put. Now I'm. Oh, there we go. Okay, we're gonna start right after this message from us. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Beard Blather. We got it right this time. Is China kaput? China is in bad shape, with banks dropping like flies in a cloud of DDT, the real estate industry gone, companies and governments bankrupt, population in decline, unemployment on the rise, bonds in the tank, and an evanescent GDP. China is at the cusp of seeing its economy crack in spectacular fashion. Did I mention the pitiful display of their weaponry in Pakistan? I know Thomas is going to have a ball with this one today. There goes another market. Some already scream that we should somehow ease tariffs and rescue China. After all, why would not we make every effort to stay the collapse of a country that has been waging a cyber war against us since the Obama administration was asleep at the switch? Or were they? Sends 300,000 spies to pretend to study at our universities while engaging in the biggest industrial espionage action in history, interfere in the internal affairs of the US, not just through thinly veiled spy networks like the Confucius Institute or those police stations, but directly through their embassy in Washington, using our social media to spread anti American propaganda. For too many years, we suffered the damage of cyber theft. Does anybody remember the Office of Personnel Management? Currency manipulation, trade barriers, dumping, active measures, asymmetric warfare, fentanyl, duh, military provocation, threats to trade routes, and raiding of our capital markets with Ponzi schemes and un-auditable companies trading in our markets that would make Enron, Corzine, and Maddoff die of shame. Do not save China. As a Chai comes stew in their own bluster, prisoners of bravado and games of Monty, the US should not cede an inch. Let's all rejoice in the Chinese economy following the fate of their ghost cities. The longer we take, the more painful it will be. We can do without solar panels manufactured by slave labor, low quality consumables, contaminated foodstuffs, and unreliable pharmaceuticals. It's high time to decouple from a disloyal, inimical, and dangerous trade partner that was never a partner and was never interested in trade. Sejong, Xi, Shishoho, Mundai. In other words, goodbye, Xi, get the fuck off. And on that, let me see, elevated thought and destruction of the Chinese pronunciation. Welcome to Beer Blather. This is Sol Montes Bradley, the largest human repository of useless information, from my golden perch in Florida. And right there, that way, is Thomas Wicker, the only living expert in World War I flamethrowers, Twitterati extraordinaire, and patient, oh so patient sufferer of the ravages of Democrats in Mexifornia. How are you doing, Thomas? Good evening.
Well, it's funny you should mention that. I learned something yesterday that I didn't know. It was called the Battle of Athens, or the Battle of McMinn County, which took place in 1946. McMinn County was a Republican stronghold. And then let me just get the names straight. The E.H. Crump political machine, which was based in Memphis, it eyed McMinn County, and so they put a Democrat sheriff up for election, and they stuffed the ballot box using deputies. And from 1936 until 1946, the Democrats controlled McMinn County, and they controlled it with ballot box stuffing, voter intimidation, and they switched over from a salaried position for law enforcement to a fee based system. Every member of law enforcement was paid according to the number of people who he arrested. So McMinn County became a Democratic-run police state, and everybody got arrested. The original sheriff ended up in Congress, and first he went to Congress, and he conspired with the governor of Tennessee, and what they did was they eliminated the Republican precincts in McMinn County. And then they gerrymandered what remained, and they got rid of all the Republicans from the state Supreme Court. So McMinn County became a fascist dictatorship run by the Democrats from 1936 to 1946. And in 1945, all the World War II veterans started coming home, actually in 1946. And they'd spent the last however many years fighting fascism, and they came home to
fight it at home.
So what they did was they banded together and they created a nonpartisan political party, and they ran for office, and they won every seat in McMinn County. And so the Democrats, they went out and they sent sheriff's they brought in 200 deputies from surrounding areas, and they set them up at polls, and they checked visually who you were voting for. And there was an elderly black voter who voted Republican, and the sheriff first beat him up and then shot him, and he survived, but this set off a powder keg. So the sheriff's deputies stole the ballot. All the votes were collected in a single ballot box, and the deputies took it to the county jail. And this is what they'd always done since 1936. And so the veterans broke into the National Guard Armory, and they took small arms, and they surrounded the jail, and they demanded the ballot box. And so a multi-hour firefight ensued, and the veterans got their hands on dynamite. So they launched 3 dynamite attacks on the jail, and after the third one, the deputies surrendered, and the ballot box was brought out. And by this time, it was daytime. And for the first time since 1936, the ballots were counted publicly in the daytime, and the nonpartisan Veterans Party won every seat. And so that was how McMinn County got rid of fascism, got rid of the Democrats. And
that might be the only way.
Well, the people tried everything. They contacted the Justice Department, which was run by FDR. So guess what the response was?
They tried to jail the veterans.
Well, exactly, and they tried everything, and nothing worked because the Democrats were using armed sheriff's deputies who beat people up, came to their houses at night, threatened them, trashed their houses, set their houses on fire.
Right.
And this was simply over politics. This had nothing to do with race.
And sometimes they weren't even wearing the hoods.
Yeah, I mean, it was done very openly because, okay, I don't know if you heard, but what the hell is that? That Donna Brazil. Donna Brazil just said publicly that they all assumed that Americans wouldn't vote for a convicted felon, so that's why they thought Kamala was going to win in a landslide. Yeah. And they, of course, they ignored the fact that we knew that Trump's felony conviction was fraudulent, which is why we voted for him.
Was he actually convicted of a felony?
And there's that too.
Because there were civil lawsuits that he lost.
Correct. So the whole thing stank so badly that it actually made people vote for Trump. And yeah. So the Democrats in McMinn County didn't think anyone would ever pick up rifles and dynamite and fight them. And these veterans, there were a multitude of Marine Corps veterans. And so they used what they'd learned, what they'd used over the last however many years to defeat these fat sheriff's deputies who'd sat out the war at home because they got a deferment being in law enforcement. So this actually happened in the United States. It's called, if you want to look it up yourself, it's called the Battle of Athens or the Battle of McMinn, McMinn County, McMinn County, Tennessee. So fascism came to McMinn County, and the World War II veterans picked up arms and defeated it. So they defeated it abroad, and they defeated it at home.
And unfortunately, the defeated fascists made it all the way to Washington, D.C. We need those veterans back.
What's interesting is that, okay, we don't see the violent voter intimidation that we saw in, say, 1936, 1938, where they're shooting people. The sheriff's deputies are openly, okay. In McMinn County, the ballot observers were the veterans, and they were physically thrown out by the deputies. We saw in 2020 that the observers weren't some of them in. They weren't allowed in, and in cases where they did get in, newspaper was taped over the area where they were counting the ballots, et cetera, et cetera. So
they pushed them out of the action.
And so that's exactly what happened in McMinn County. This is what Democrats do. And Trump won in 2024 because the Democrats were so stupid that they thought Americans would not vote for what they described as a convicted felon. They ignored all the rallies.
Right, but don't take Donna Brazil's word for it. She's always been an idiot. They also didn't have 20 million absentee ballots in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, I mean, it was a confluence. It was a confluence of things. Yes. But
there were several factors in there.
But the reason they didn't have 20 million absentee ballots was because they thought they wouldn't need it. I think the Democrats what defeated them, number one, was the American voter, but number two was their own complacency. Kamala Harris didn't campaign. She thought she had it in the bag. You know, you and I have spoken about this several times. They honestly thought they had it in the bag, that she would win in a landslide.
I mean, I was cracking up all along because I could see they actually believed this shit. And it was, and it still is, delusional. There was no way she could win, period. End of story. I remember in Spain in March of 24, they asked me what I thought of the elections, and I told them, you know, I can see no scenario where Trump does not win. But what if they change Biden for Kamala Harris? I can see no scenario in which Trump does not win. I don't care if it is I used that expression in Spanish they thought was funny, but essentially the delusional Alzheimer's patient, or the cretinous wench from California. It doesn't matter. And if those two were to be replaced by a third one, I don't care if they come up with Michelle Obama, Chelsea Clinton, or any other wasted name. It's not going to happen. And they asked me why I was so convinced. And the problem was not that so many more of us were going to vote for Trump, but that so many more of them didn't have the strength anymore to vote for that shit.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, they alienated a massive number of their own voters, and look at what they're doing now with the attacks on Tesla owners and
Yeah.
violence.
Democrats, you idiots.
Exactly, they're committing acts of horrendous violence against their own voters. What do you think is going to happen? Well, we know what's going to happen. They're going to vote for us, for our side, and it's hard for a lot of people to accept. It's not as hard for me to accept because I've known so many people like this, but the Democrats have no ability to see themselves objectively. They are not introspective ever, and they are incapable of viewing themselves objectively. So they have no idea that they're creating new conservative voters by attacking Tesla owners. It doesn't occur to them. It never enters their little minds, and they will pay for it. Because the violence, while it's not as widespread as it was earlier, it's still there. It won't go away. The hatred of Elon Musk. I saw a video of a guy who seemed to be auditioning for a movie, and the movie role was stereotypical leftist beta male. He had big glasses. He was pale. He was thin.
He had hair on his hand too.
Well, he came into a Tesla dealership and he threw a pie in the face of this Tesla robot on display, and he was all grim, and it was just like, you're a cartoon character. You are a cartoon character. Like, if somebody saw you on the street, they would know everything they need to know about you just by looking at you, and that's frightening when somebody is that much of a stereotype. Willingly, it's frightening that people choose to do that. People, and they call Trump supporters a cult because they're projecting their own cultism onto us. Trump supporters are the most diverse people probably ever in American history in terms of background, race, sexual orientation, education. It just goes on and on and on. And then the people who throw pies in the face of Tesla robots, there's only one stratum of society that's doing that. You're not going to have a leftist voting longshoreman come into a Tesla dealership with a pie and throw it in the face of a robot.
Yeah, though I should say that longshoreman is farther and farther from the Democratic Party as the days go by.
Well, that's exactly the point, is that the Republicans are the party of the working class.
Now, the Republicans are the party of common sense.
Of common sense.
They are the only ones that are not totally fucking insane. I hesitate to use, this is the party of the middle class, this is the party of the working class, because I don't believe in classes, and I don't think we should. But to put it mildly, most Republicans are not insane. Most Democrats are. This is a question of sanity, not class. These people are utterly delusional.
Well, see, that's what a reporter, the Breitbart channel has a podcast with a guy named Peter Marlowe. I think it's called Fight Club. I think that's the name of the show. And they had a reporter on who just come from the White House reporter, some party, or speakers, whatever. I don't know if it was I don't think it was the one where the comedian tells jokes, and that one comes later. But anyway, this person said that it no longer comes down to leftist journalists versus conservative journalists. She says it's now a battle between the insane and the sane.
Right.
She said that the reporters were applauding absolute total insanity being spewed out by the speakers. And she was amazed that it's come down to this, but it has.
But it has dramatically. Things that would have caused people to be laughed out of that room by even the most liberal reporter are now able to say it and get an ovation for it. It's insane. It's ridiculous. And, just from this week, we're going to be talking about China and all that jazz. But remember when Ocasio-Cortez was first elected to Congress, and she was telling everybody with a microphone and a camera how she was going to run for president in 2 years. Except that the stupid cow was 28 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And in 2 years, she would have been 30. And it would be several election cycles before she even freaking qualified. I mean, her ignorance on display in such a way, and of course she didn't even notice. And the ignorance of her supporters that essentially cheered her willingness to run for president. I mean, she might as well, I don't know, run for astronaut of the month. She doesn't qualify. Now she's saying how as a Congress thing, she has the authority to go into every holding facility and nobody can stop her at the gate. I have news for her. She doesn't have that authority.
Nobody does.
And, well, jail inspectors do.
Yeah,
she doesn't.
But inspectors can only inspect a certain number of jails within their purview.
Of course, not any. The other thing is, she confuses. Somebody talked to her about her oversight obligations. And I don't think she understands the meaning of oversight. She thinks that she has to get into the restaurant kitchens and check for grease accumulation in the vents. Uh, Oversight means auditing in congressional terms. It means Congress making sure that the government is spending the money that is allocated for the purpose it was allocated to. It doesn't mean checking to see if the shoes of a military parade officer are shiny enough.
Well, also, again, she's spending all this energy and emotion over criminals. Right now, the people being deported are the criminals. The ICE is concentrating 100% on the criminals right now. And the criminals, including the crime of being here, over and above the crime of being here illegally.
Yes.
But the only time they grab up people who haven't committed other crimes in this country is when they get no cooperation. They know that the person they're looking for is in this building, and so they go in and they arrest everybody on the floor. And if the city had cooperated, then they would only get that one guy right now. So the Democrats are going to whatever, somebody named Naz. I don't know what the hell he is. I don't know if he's a congressman or a mayor or whatever, but he got arrested for trying to go in and inspect the ICE cells.
That fucking imbecile is the mayor of Newark.
Yeah, okay.
Which is, is an office that is giving us an endless list of cretins, starting with Spartacus.
Yeah, and the ICE released mugshots of all the people he was trying to free.
Yeah.
And it was just like this whole thing just went right in his face.
Oh God.
And so Ocasio-Cortez says, I can do better than that.
Yeah, sure. I think that she should break into Guantanamo. And then we close the door behind her and forget the key.
Well, I encourage her to do more of everything she's doing, because they are honestly, people really need to accept this. The Democrats don't know how they're coming across to the average voter. There's an HBO series called The Last of Us, which is based on a video game, and both the series and I think the TV series and the game were created by a wildly left-wing Israeli, and he's got Israelis and Palestinians in both the game and the movie, except he's changed things slightly. And of course, the Israelis are the Nazis, and the Palestinians are the saintly. In the game and in the movie, they are in the series, they worship a female deity, Muhammad Des. But
Fatima?
the series is uber ultra woke to the point where they went out and they hired the homeliest leading lady they could find. And of course, she's a proud lesbian, and it has apparently one of the most nauseating lesbian sex scenes ever filmed. And the reviews from everybody, left and right, are universal. This series would have been a big hit in 2017, but everybody has moved past everything in the series that it's pushing. Right. All the wokeness that it's pushing is now gone. Nobody wants to hear it anymore. And nobody wants to hear that men are the cause of all the problems. Nobody wants to hear about girl bosses. Nobody wants to see a 90-pound, 5-foot-tall woman throwing 250-pound stuntmen across the studio. It's just not. The audience drop off was something. It was well over 2/3, and they're now HBO is now wondering whether or not the rumor is that they've already greenlit a third season, but the second season has nothing going for it. The game was very unpopular, so nobody understands why they decided to make a series about it. And then they made the series much, much worse than the game, because the series is nothing but leftist woke propaganda. And that whole, all of that has come in, its time has come and gone. We're seeing a renaissance. I read that Generation Z is going back to churches, temples, and mosques in this country. So the pendulum has swung all the way over to the other side now, and the age of the age of wokeism is almost at a complete end. Nobody enjoyed being woke. It was all about being bullied into being woke.
Except for the proud lesbian.
Well, the worst scene.
Notice I used the singular form.
Well, the worst scene in the series is one of the female leads tells the potato face girl that she's pregnant, and the potato face girl says, "I'm going to be a daddy." And that statement has so many problems with it. It's you're going to be a daddy? I thought you said men were horrible. Okay, you're a lesbian, I get it, but you had nothing to do with the creation of this baby. If anything, you would say, I'm going to be a mommy, because, Sarah has two mommies, or whatever that book title was. But I'm going to be a daddy? And she says it with her face all bright, and apparently you could hear the screams of the audience, nationwide, as that line was spoken.
I have to say, my friend, that I agree mostly with what you say, but I don't feel like the pendulum is swung all the way back. I think it's going there.
Yeah.
And I think we're making great progress, but there's a long way to go. There's wokeism embedded in every facet of our lives. Until I see it out of our schools and universities, I won't consider the pendulum anywhere near where it should be.
Yeah, those are all lagging indicators. It'll all happen, but
yeah, I think it's happening. I agree with you on that. Yes. But maybe I'm getting impatient too, because I was sick and fucking tired of wokeism before people called it wokeism. When we were calling it political correctness.
Sure.
And back in the 80s, I used to rile against political correctness and God, and the change of vocabulary to accommodate the prejudices of the bourgeoisie. I couldn't stand it. I never called a garbage man a sanitation worker, and I never will. And that was kind of like the canary in the mine of what was coming later. I mean, you start calling a garbage picker a sanitation worker, and you end up calling a male with a foot-long dick a girl.
Well, I'm almost 63 years old, and I have never seen a female garbage man. I've never seen a woman riding on the back of a garbage truck, or I've never seen a woman. Now they have these trucks that have a big robotic arm that comes down and grabs the can and dumps it in the truck. The driver, I've never seen a woman driving that truck. There are there was a
Well, but you see a man who wants to be called Loretta.
well, there was a dash cam video taken from inside an 18-wheeler that was on a bridge, and a car crashed in front of it, and the driver swerved to avoid it, and she went over the bridge, and the rear of the 18-wheeler lodged, and the cab was hanging free, and they had to rescue her. She was a very, very young black woman. That was the first very young black female 18-wheeler driver I've ever seen. And, you know, it doesn't matter, you know, that doesn't impact the story in any way, but that was the first female black young trucker I've ever seen. She looked like she was probably in her late 20s or even mid 20s. So, you know, there are a tiny handful of women doing jobs like that, but it's all right to say garbage man, because there's no such thing as a garbage woman. I mean, there really isn't, you know?
I don't know. We may have to ask them, do you feel like a woman today? It, it it's not even that. It's the whole thing of changing reality. Who are you going to believe, me or your lying eyes? You see, that 6'7" burly male is a women's league champion of one thing or another. Women are expected to compete with males who couldn't cut it in the male circuit, so now they claim to be women. I mean, the whole thing is absurd. It's still going on. It is, I believe, finally being appreciated for the insanity it is. But it hasn't gone away. I cannot
Well,
believe we're still discussing this.
well, the author of the Monty Python Loretta sketch
Yes,
said on Twitter that he wants to see Stephen Miller hanged, and then he deleted the tweet because, of course, he got excoriated. This guy has become everything he used to hate. John
yeah,
Cleese. He's become everything he used to hate.
everything he used to hate. I heard him on a interview about a year ago, and I decided not to tune in anymore when I see him because it was depressing.
Yeah, he's a dummy. He's a political idiot, and
Yes,
you know, it's hard to reconcile. They all are. I mean, Michael Palin now makes grim documentaries about the horrors of war and how awful people are. And uh, 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 Terry Terry Gilliam was the
Terry
director.
Gilliam. Yeah, he died.
No, the other Terry, he died. He made a grim documentary. It's just they're all grim. They have no sense of humor, and it's like, but you're Monty Python. You know, like nobody wants to interview you over. Well, I guess they do. You know, oh look, we have John Cleese on our side. So you know, let's get
Yeah,
John Cleese and
by the
his
way, the new generation doesn't know who the fuck Joe Cleese is.
no, and I just find it a shame. It's you should have left us with our memories. You know,
Yes.
like you shouldn't have ruined our ability to enjoy your past work, because now when we see you, we just think of some vicious butthole who you know does nothing but drink wine all day and complain about conservatives. You
I
know,
would have loved to keep in my mind the Ministry of Funny Walks.
exactly, exactly.
Speaking of which, you know where this is leading. Speaking of which, I have a little something for our viewers of where the Ministry of Funny Walks may have originated. And this is, you know, India and Pakistan are two very serious countries, or I should say, very serious countries, and they take everything seriously. And they come to blows when somebody doesn't take them seriously. But this is what their border looks like. Oy vey. Where the hell am I? Here. This is a cross between the Ministry of Funny Walks and Magila.
Well, they're like blue-footed boobies doing the mating dance.
Yes, isn't that? Now, this is at the closing of the gate. You know, the flags come down. And look at the sound of the crowd behind them.
Yeah, both sides. Look in the background. No, I thought those were bleachers, but I don't think they are. Yeah, they are. They are bleachers. I can see the handrail.
Yeah.
They both get crowds to come and cheer and throw insults at each other.
Yeah, or banana peels. I don't know. But
they used to shake hands when they closed the border. The last two guys there used to shake hands.
Yeah, but that's only when they're having good relations.
Yeah.
Which is 3 days out of every 5 years.
Yeah.
God, these people are insane. And we are looking at this, you know, like everybody's mesmerized by the war because 1,000 people died in a country of 1 billion. I don't think they give a shit.
Neither side cares. Neither side. The Pakistanis believe that all Pakistanis who die in this war are martyrs, so they're going to go right to paradise. And the Indians think that you know,
we have too many people anyway.
There's a million more where that guy came from. So you know. No, and okay, we're going to talk about China. Everybody's making a big deal. They say a Pakistani flown Chinese jet shot down an Indian flown French Rafale, which is a fifth generation.
Yeah, the Rafale. It's a toy fifth generation fighter.
Right. None of that matters. Okay, let me just make sure I got my dates right. So, introduce China. Okay. So the okay, in 1965, the Pakistanis were still flying the F-86 Sabre jet, which is an American jet that dated from the late 1940s.
Yeah.
And the Indians were flying the Hawker Hunter, which dated from the early 1960s. And in a dogfight, a Pakistani pilot shot down 5 Indian Hawker Hunters in under a minute. He went, basically they were flying in formation and he just went, brrr. The F-86 still used machine guns, and machine guns were considered obsolete. All dogfighting would be done with air-to-air missiles. So the Pakistanis have a long history of great pilots, and the Indians, regardless of the quality of their hardware, have a long history of troubles with their pilots. Not
quite so great pilots, yes.
And it could be that the Indians were flying way the hell too close to the Pakistan, or the line of whatever it's called, the line of contact. in Kashmir, because the Indians fired air-to-ground missiles in that first attack. They attacked terrorist training camps and headquarters and things like that. And you can fire those missiles from a hell of a long way away. And the report I read was that the French Rafale that was shot down was 7 kilometers from the border, and the range of the missile is I think 100 kilometers. So he could have been 50, 60, 70 kilometers from the border. If he was 7 kilometers, then he would not have had time to react. If a missile is, if a surface to air missile is coming at your jet to shoot you down, the way you dodge it is you bleed off the energy from the missile. You dodge it, and then when the missile is almost petered out, you make a massive turn, like a really sharp turn, and it goes past you, it goes down. But if he was that close to the border, basically what happened was they fired a missile right up. And like, okay, that's if it's a surface to air missile. They're claiming that.
I'm sorry, but I love the sound effect of the missile from Pakistan being fired. Can we do that again?
I forgot.
Oh, I think it was.
Okay, there we go.
Or something to that effect, yes.
But the Pakistanis are saying that they shot it down with a jet, which was an air-to-air missile. But again, if this guy was too close to the Pakistani border, then the Pakistani jet could have fired it at almost point-blank range. So it could be a training issue, or it could, the Pakistanis haven't released any gun camera film. So, no. This conflict is producing the most BS propaganda I've ever seen.
I love the 125 plane dogfight.
Yeah.
Love it. I wish I could have seen it.
It wasn't a dogfight because the two sides were like 100 miles apart or something.
Yeah, the whole thing is ridiculous, and it's not the only way. I picked up this little bit of info today. Let me just find it first. Oh yeah. Here, speaking of false information. Finally. This came from a Twitter account, Visegrad24, which I found to be extremely unreliable most of the time. The text on it is China's Vice Premier He Difeng and Chinese delegation walked out midway through the U.S.-China trade talks in Geneva with Treasury Secretary Evanescent and the U.S. delegation without giving any reasons for their swift exit. Right?
Hmm.
Let me show you the Chinese delegation leaving. There's one fucking problem with this thing. The meeting had a lunch break and continued until late in the evening. And then they came out announcing some kind of stupid agreement on some kind of stupid principle, which is quite the compromise, considering that no party recognized having called the other to the meetings to begin with. But this news, this bit of news that the Chinese abandoned the meeting and left Besant and the U.S. delegation looking at the ceiling and jacking off, is simply not true. Yet everybody is repeating it.
Well, okay, go back to that picture.
Yes.
These two Chinese have a Caucasian security guard. There's another one next to. There's one with his head turned away from the camera. Can't tell, who he is.
Yes.
But and the guy in the gray suit in the middle. Look how disheveled his hair is. He's like been tearing out his hair.
Yeah.
He looks like he just got out of bed. The Chinese are in.
Maybe he did.
Well, the Chinese are in no position to make demands on anybody. Their economy is cratering much faster than anybody predicted, and as you pointed out in your opening statement, we shouldn't help them because they're not. I mean, they're beyond an adversary. They're an enemy.
They're the declared enemy of this country.
Yeah. They want to see us go down. If they go down, it's entirely their own damn fault. And I don't think we should throw them any lifelines.
There are several things, as many opening statements as we can make. In 1930, there was an act that prohibited the U.S. Government from allowing the import of any product made with slave labor.
Mm-hmm.
Who makes the Chinese solar panels?
Slaves.
Uyghur slaves. Thank you very fucking much. Why are we, never mind tariffs, why are we allowing the importation of Chinese products made with slave labor?
Well, this is, okay, not only are they using Uyghur slaves, they're doing a pretty damn good job of wiping the Uyghurs off the face of the earth. And
that too.
And we're supposed to.
They use them to make solar panels when they're not harvesting organs from them.
Yeah. The Chinese government, again, governments are different from people. The Chinese government are despicable people who don't put any value on human life and hate the United States, want to see us, Xi Jinping gets away with a lot because of that weird little tiny smile he has. People go, oh, he's a big panda. Oh, he's a blood-stained dictator.
He's a fucking anaconda. The son of a bitch. The problem is people have forgotten what a communist regime looks like.
Mm-hmm.
I can see our press talking about Xi Jinping as if he were anything other than a bloody fucking dictator that would make Stalin blush. The amount of dead people in his hands is far greater than that of just about any other dictator in the history of mankind. And we're talking about him. Oh, he's a panda. Oh, I like his man. He's a good man. I don't care. The second one is there are people who are constantly pressuring for some kind of a deal, we need a new trade deal with China. We need China and all that bullshit. Anybody who says that, and I don't care really who says it, is an asshole. Number one, China is not and has never been a good faith partner of the United States. Its purpose, its objective, from the very time that they took power in China, was to destroy the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
They're still working at it. We have 300,000 Chinese students in America. 300,000. Who pays for their tuition and their upkeep?
Who?
How many people in China can afford $150,000 to have their child studying in the U.S.? 3? 4? Not even party people can. All of these assholes have their studies and their food and paid for by the Chinese government. by the Communist Party.
which
And they are
doesn't,
expected to pay it back in services.
well, of course, meaning they're spies.
Yes, each and every one of them, all of them. So they get them into projects or programs run by universities like MIT or whatever, where they get access to latest technologies and military research, even. And then they do the report. And if any one of these assholes at any time decides that he doesn't want to do it anymore, he's grabbed by the balls, taken to Chinatown, where a goon from the regime puts their balls in a vise and reminds them that even if they manage to get the balls out of the vise, you still have family in China. And they do that through direct offices that they maintain across the country and the Confucius Institutes in our universities. And we allow them to do that. Did you see throughout last month all of the tweets and messages and shit produced by the Chinese embassy making fun of American workers?
Oh yeah, yeah.
In what part of the Vienna Convention are embassies allowed to actively uh, 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 create and spread propaganda in the host country?
Well, they also have secret police stations in the United States.
Yeah, that's the one I was referring to.
Yeah.
Where they take the so you know all of these Chinese students ought to be sent home. Have you noticed how some people say, but China is so advanced in some fields, right?
Which fields?
That's my first question. The second, how many Americans go to study engineering in China?
I'm sure there may be an idiot or two who does it from Reed College or Orange State College,
Who probably couldn't cut it to be admitted in a regular university here, but
yeah.
it's essentially none. Why? Because whatever the Chinese know about engineering is what they learn from us and what they steal from us.
Well, people don't understand. In the Korean War, which lasted from 1950 to 1953, we had defeated the North Koreans by October of 1950, and the Chinese intervened. And from that point on, we fought the Chinese all the way until 1953. So we fought the Chinese for 3 years. And this was back in the day when Chinese had massive families. So the Chinese used human waves. The actor Michael Caine wrote in his autobiography, he fought in Korea, and he described facing a Chinese human wave attack at night. The sound of bugles haunted him for the rest of his life. And the Chinese sent men in winter into battle barefoot. We took Chinese prisoners who had black feet that had to be amputated. It's the Chinese have never given a crap about human life, even the life of their own people, and
especially not those.
The Chinese invented the death of 1,000 cuts, which is the name is a misnomer because it makes it sound like they inflict 1,000 little slices. No, the death of 1,000 cuts is a live dissection. You are strapped to a post, and your arms are extended, and you're in a cruciform shape, and then they dissect you alive. That was invented in China, and there are postcards of this all over. You can look it up if you want. I recommend you don't, because somebody who's half dissected but still alive does not look good. The Chinese were and still are savages in a lot of ways. the Chinese not only eat dogs, they torture the dogs before they kill them because they say that the fear that it produces and the adrenaline makes the meat taste better. So the Chinese will make advertisements and they show pretty girls burning dogs with flamethrowers. The dog's still alive and they're smiling at the camera, and it's an ad for flavorful dog meat, because the dog is full of adrenaline and pain hormones, and that makes the meat taste better.
Pre-cooked dog sausages. It's amazing because the people who so hate Fauci, and not that I love him, I hate him too, for making experiments with beagles, have no fucking problem with the way Chinese treat dogs. You mentioned the Korean War and the Chinese intervention. This chap, this is my favorite medal. I don't know. For a moment there, I thought you could see it. Let's see if we could see it.
I saw him.
This chap is General MacArthur, who was fired by Truman because he maintained that, I mean, he wanted to pursue the Chinese all the way to Beijing. And he could have done it. The way things were going in the war at that time, he could have freaking done it.
The North Koreans were defeated, and North Korea was divided between North and South across what was called the 38th parallel.
Yes.
And MacArthur wanted to cross the 38th parallel and go all the way up to the top of Korea and occupy North Korea and essentially unite the country. And he was told he couldn't do that.
At what point, by the way, he did? At what point the U.S. forces were practically on the Chinese border? Then they had to withdraw them to the 38th parallel.
It was the same with aircraft. Aircraft were not allowed to cross the 38th parallel. So the Chinese and Russian or Soviet pilots fought. The North Koreans essentially, they had a propeller-driven, a piston aircraft, Air Force, that was all shot down by the time the Chinese intervened in October of 1950. And it was Chinese and Russian pilots who flew the MiG-15, and all they had to do was cross the 38th parallel, and we were not allowed to chase them. So that order was ignored, and a lot of aircraft were shot down inside the 38th parallel, and everybody knew about it, but nobody said anything about it because it was such a stupid rule. The enemy would come south of the 38th parallel, and then he would turn around and cross the 38th parallel and then say, "Ha ha, you can't get me." And it was another one of those things like the Viet Cong hiding in Laos, and that sort of thing. And
I assure you, my cousin Jimmy, during the Vietnam War, was never, ever did he bring a plane to Laos.
Well, in the Iraq War, the Iranians set up a whole city on the border with Iraq that was manufacturing and shipping an explosive called an explosively formed penetrator that, when it blew up, it would shoot a jet of molten copper that could cut through the armor of anything we had. And we weren't allowed to do anything about it because it was in Iranian territory. So one day the British long-range desert patrol crossed the border into Iran and leveled the entire town and killed every single person in it. There were no women or children there. They killed all the financiers. They killed all the weapons shippers. They killed everybody. And guess what? no more explosively formed penetrators ever appeared again in Iraq. Would you? It's almost like the two were connected or something. So we've had don't cross the border because Iran might get mad. Well, but Iran is the one that's causing all this havoc, killing our men. Yes, I know, but we can't cross the border because they might get
We
mad.
can pursue. Same thing we're having now. Iran has never slowed down its pursuit for nuclear weapons. Just when some idiots are beginning to believe again that Iran may be doing research for peaceful purposes, fucking morons like Rand Paul, uh, they find another plant that they had kept in secret that produces elements that can only be used in pursuit of a hydrogen bomb.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, isn't that lovely? And at the same time, they are developing missiles so that they can have a delivery system, and we're still jacking off. I want
Well,
to believe that pretty soon that's going to come to an end. And in the propaganda wars here, this past week, a bunch of morons have come out. Every single news agency and newspaper and CNN and MSLSD and the rest of them, that Trump was growing tired of Netanyahu. That Trump was freezing Netanyahu out, and he was going to
why?
pursue a deal with Saudi Arabia without Israel, and he was going to pursue this and that. And you and I discussed this, and we said this is all bullshit, right? It's not worth considering. Of course, the White House came out today, which is all bullshit. But why are they doing this? I think it's part of a disinformation campaign. I'm actually beginning to believe that there are people in the White House that float these ideas. And the idea is to get the stupid mullahs to think that there is a crack between Israel and the US. And it only tells me that the day of reckoning in Iran is coming.
Well, the press hates Trump so much that they would gladly gladly be puppets of the Iranians without knowing precisely what it is the Iranians do. That they just see the Iranians as being anti-Trump, and that's as far as the thinking goes. My guess is that the average American reporter has absolutely no idea about the history of the Iranian mullahs and the Islamic Revolution. They have no idea. They have no idea of the atrocities committed. They have no idea the absolute hell that the mullahs have made Iran into. They have no idea what Iran was like before the mullahs. All they know is that the mullahs hate Trump. So I would guess that the average American reporter would gladly do what the mullahs ask them to do, simply because the mullahs are fellow Trump haters.
Yeah,
and
I have to say that too.
Yeah, and I think you're right. Whenever Trump is in the presence of the press, he absolutely excoriates them to their face, and they get hysterical, and he laughs. I can't remember what the occasion was, but suddenly he was talking about Buttigieg, and he said Buttigieg would ride to work every day on his bicycle with his husband on the back, and
Yes.
it's a very close, lovely relationship.
Oh, I was cracking up. Yes, I know exactly what you're talking about. Going to work on a bicycle with her husband, but hugging him in the back of the bike. I mean, come on. China, going back to, I mentioned in the introduction a lot of stuff that is absolutely true. But there is way more that I didn't mention. One way that Chinese companies and local governments finance themselves is with the issuance of bonds. And this is what's been happening to the bonds in China lately. You see that?
Mm-hmm.
If we did that, people would claim we're broke.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we would be. That was a monthly average issuance of national debt plus local government bonds in hundreds of billions of renminbis. And they're over leveraged in ways that are very, very difficult to quantify from here. Only an economy completely controlled by a central party can do this kind of shit without um, without there being hell to pay. Now, let me show you this chart here. This one is fiscal revenue in trillions of dollars. Now, you see a lot of information there. Take a look at the third column. The first one is the year.
Mm-hmm.
The second is the total fiscal revenue. And the third one is increase rate. That's the only one you need to look to get a picture. Look what happens in 2022 onwards. There is no increase rate. There is a drop.
Well, if you look at 2014, we have 2.72 trillion. And if you look at 2025 first quarter, you have 0.97 trillion.
Bingo.
So the Chinese economy has fallen off a cliff.
It literally, it's falling off the proverbial cliff. And there is very little these people can do at this point. Of course, we are going to have people in the U.S. Demanding that we save them from themselves. I don't think we should do that.
Well, also, we can't. We can't. We really can't. We don't have the means to save China from itself.
Now, let me show you the fiscal deficit in trillions. It's about the only thing that's growing over there. And this is all part of a video put together by a Chinese woman. I'm going to start it now because now we're going to have images from malls in China.
Sorry.
这里大一点，起码700-800万没了。这里还有这里整一个厂子几千万全部打水漂，现在空无一人，连过街的老鼠都没有一个。这里就是当年那些深圳有钱人挤破脑袋都要抢的发财铺，现如今成为别人口中最大的笑话、最大的败笔、最大的痛啊！你看，一眼看过去，鬼影都没有一个。1楼、2楼、3楼、4楼、5楼、6楼，全部都废了，兄弟们。
Yeah, the escalators aren't even running.
No. Like he says, there isn't even a ghost here.
现如今你能看到的一个情况，就是深圳赤裸裸的一个惨状。
I saw a video where a guy was riding a bullet train to work, and he was walking from car to car to car, filming. Not a single passenger on the entire car.
You're going to have a very similar in this video. If I didn't already, I'm going to put in SQV the whole video for people to take a look at it. Now, the presenter has a very strong accent, but you have to rely on the captions. But you can see, the empty factories, the empty malls, the empty trains, the empty buses, the empty cities. You can also see the demonstrations in front of banks.
In 2014, the Chinese were already building ghost cities, and that chart they showed the drop from 2.72 trillion in revenue to 0.97 trillion in revenue over a 9-year period. The Chinese were already building ghost cities, and they were building skyscrapers, multi-story apartment buildings. Everything was empty, but they had street sweepers. They had They had policemen directing non-existent traffic. The city was staffed, but nobody lived there and nobody worked there. There were no private. You would see these shots of the sun through the building, and every floor was empty of furniture. So I knew in 2014 that what they're telling us is bogus. A country with a robust economy doesn't build ghost cities.
We knew it was coming. We've been saying it's coming. We've seen it, but the problem is that we're now getting to the point that the Chinese have no longer resources to pretend. When they have to close the banks and stiff depositors, that's a problem. Then you learn that there is no social security in China. That people who lose their employment in Shanghai are very shit out of luck.
Yeah.
And the government is right now, it's launched a campaign encouraging people to return to the countryside.
Oh, like the Great Leap Forward.
Yeah, the Great Leap Backward. Let's go back to the country, man, because this ain't work. It ain't working. So why? Because there are no resources, and you have these masses of people in cities, which is pretty much like, I don't know, England in the late 1800s. Mass of people unemployed, without a safety net, without medical care, without food. They're a powder keg. So the Chicoms want to take them back to the countryside so they can be hungry over there and not pestering me around the government buildings.
I never understood the communist obsession with sticking to your guns to the point where you're pretending when it comes to everything. So on a certain level, the Chinese know that their system doesn't work. The Russians know that their system doesn't work. The North Koreans know that their system doesn't work.
Yeah.
But rather than do something about it, they pretend. I saw a photo. It was the first photo ever taken of a Chinese soldier. It was the first close-up photo taken of a Chinese soldier during a parade. And they wear what's called a standing collar. The collar that you wear on your shirt is called a stand and fall collar. And the standing collar is just like this, like a
Indian or Mao.
Right. And on the very edge, under the guy's chin, there were two straight pins sticking up right under his chin to make sure that he kept his head up and didn't move his head downward because he would be stuck by the pins. So every one of those soldiers was wearing a uniform that had pins built in to keep their heads up like this. Any country that does that.
It's very comfortable in battle, you know.
I just watched a documentary about a single Vietnamese who took out an entire company of Chinese during the Sino-Vietnamese War. Yep. It was one of the last great victories carried out with the SKS rifle. The Chinese were just running in circles, screaming and shouting, and he was just picking them off. And he picked off 120 men, by himself. And that's China for you. You still have people telling us that the Chinese are going to take Taiwan. Well, the Chinese keep leaking what they claim are plans to take Taiwan. They want to blockade it. They want to blockade it with a naval blockade. I mean, exactly.
With a fishing fleet?
not only that, every single ship in that blockade, they circle Taiwan. Every single ship becomes a target.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
The Japanese built submarines specifically for the purpose of fighting the Chinese. Nobody talks about the Japanese submarine fleet. It's huge. And all their submarines fire torpedoes. They don't fire missiles as much as they fire torpedoes. They're built to sink Chinese ships.
Yes. Chinese ships, which, by the way, everybody's talking about how many and how cheap they make them. They don't realize what the crap they're actually saying.
No.
Because if we could make, we cannot make ships as fast or cheap as the Chinese. We don't need cheap, fast ships, idiot. We need ships that won't sink, like the U.S., like the USS America. Remember that one?
Mm-hmm.
It took 4 weeks of bombardments, and eventually they had to scuttle it from the inside because it wouldn't sink. Now try that with a Chinese ship and see what happens. I'll bet you 10 to 1, one torpedo, and the thing is gone.
Well, there was a destroyer in World War II that was hit by 18 kamikazes, and it didn't sink.
And frankly, our aircraft carriers are virtually unsinkable.
Yeah, I mean, there was one of them, I think it was the Franklin, that the captain ordered abandoned ship, and then he and a handful of men stayed on board, and then they basically sailed it home at some big list, and they were told that the repair job would take a year, and they did it in like 2 weeks or something, you know. So
and the reference I made to the USS America was an aircraft carrier. It was decommissioned. It was supposed to be sold for scrap, and the Navy decided to see, use it for an experiment. What can this ship sustain before it sinks? For 4 weeks, they bombarded this thing day and night, and they couldn't sink it. Think about that. And they're telling me that these tin cans the Chinese make, you should have seen, by the way, the J-27s in action in Pakistan. Now we know exactly what Chinese aircraft do in action. You know what that is?
crash.
Bingo! They're more of a danger to the pilot than to the enemy. The Chinese weaponry, that it got so bad that the Chinese requested Pakistan not to use their weapons anymore.
Well, there's a reason why most of the world doesn't buy Chinese weaponry. The Pakistanis are basically a patron state of China, so they'll do what they're told. But then there's a few African countries that have their token Chinese jet, in their Air Force, so-called. But there's no developed country. You're not going to see any European country buy Chinese fighter jets.
Oh, no. This is Chinese aid to African countries. You let me take your minerals, I'll give you 2 planes. I have to say this because I didn't know, but much respect. Both guys says the USS America CV-66 was my first command.
Wow.
There you go. Hats off, and thank you, both guys. And I believe it was the CV-66, the aircraft carrier.
Yes. CV means aircraft carrier.
Yeah. I think, and that was his first command. Look at that. Yeah, By the way, you've just told us a little bit about your age, poor guy. We're gonna need to boil you for more than 24 hours to get anything tender out of that body. Um, don't give any ideas to the Chinese, though, because they may resort to that. So you know the whole thing, and somebody says, didn't you say that they use Russian engines? Yes, they use Illusion jet engines on these fighter planes because they cannot make one. It's that stupid. And we already mentioned the solar panels. They're number one builder in the world with slave labor. We shouldn't be. By the way, we shouldn't be importing them. We shouldn't be pushing them. We should be using them, and that's in general terms. Uh, what is it that China makes that we cannot easily replace?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's anything at all. Even the cheap consumables we can get from other countries with cheap labor. And frankly, I don't think America is going broke because we have to pay an extra buck or two for a disposable umbrella.
Okay. Yeah, the Chinese get a lot of people to buy their UAVs because they basically copied, at least on the outside, American UAVs, but they cost a fraction of the price. And so there's countries. It said country. Let me just countries in South Asia, Sub-Saharan Africa, and Southeast Asia.
Where else?
Yeah.
Where else? If they use them at all, they use it, against a ragtag band of political opponents. This is not serious. We get a lot, says Poster Index of pharmaceuticals from China. Yes,
Yeah.
I know. We shouldn't get a fucking aspirin from China.
No, I mean, that's crazy. And I say that as somebody who depends on pharmaceuticals for my everyday life. I take glaucoma medication. Here's one here. It's called Simbrinza. I call in at a certain time to get refills for my Simbrinza eye drops. And they told me one time, we're not expecting any in for a week and a half. So I ran out of Simbrinza because we couldn't get it from the Chinese for some reason. The Chinese had decided that they were going to put a hold on selling Simbrinza to the U.S.
Well, let me guide your conversation for 3 questions or so. Do you remember the Chinese baby formula scandal?
Mm-hmm.
Would you still put their shit in your eyes?
This is nobody. I mean, Simbrinza is this is made by Alcon. This isn't covered in my my health insurance. So this little bottle here cost me $85. And Simbrinza is the only eye drop that works at this point. I do have to take Simbrinza 3 times a day. If I don't take Simbrinza, I have to take an eye drop that I have to take every 2 hours. So I'm stuck. Simbrinza, the only country that makes Simbrinza for American usage is China. So that's it. So, and I go every 4 months to get my eyes checked. My glaucoma has been, it's steady. It's not increasing. So the medication works. I don't want to take Chinese medication.
No,
but
I listen. I would even take Mexican before I took Chinese. Now this is for your eye pressure.
Uh-huh.
Mm.
Yeah, I
Uh,
have glaucoma, and
yeah,
it's very mild.
there's got to be something from Europe, from England, from France. I don't believe. Number one, the Chinese are not innovators; they are pirates. The original must be made in Germany, Switzerland, France, England, and there have to be ways of obtaining it. I'll make it my mission, my friend, to find you a replacement as soon as possible.
Well, it's the thing is there's a million different eye drops, and you can try.
I'm talking about this shit that works for you.
Yeah. You can try a whole bunch of other stuff. Okay, medicine is really weird. I had this chronically red eye, and the surface of the eye was rough, and it looked like it looked like I'd survived a car accident. And I had 2 biopsies of the eye. Boy, oh boy, there's nothing like being able to see the needle coming in and sewing up the hole they made after they took the biopsy.
I know. I noticed that the eye is connected to the asshole. Did you notice that?
No,
Because
actually, no.
yeah, because when you see the needle coming in, your asshole tightens.
Well, I basically asked the doctor for steroids, and he agreed. So I take steroids twice a day, and it solved the issue. Nobody from my doctor to UCLA could figure out what was causing this, but we did find a cure for it. So that's medicine for you. That's, whenever you hear Al Gore tell you that the science is settled, no science is settled. No
Not
science.
ever, by definition.
By definition.
You know what's settled? Dogma is settled.
Dogma is settled, yeah.
Not science.
Breitbart did a review of the new Pope, and they're a bit worried about his stance on the climate. And it's like, really? Like, why do you care what the Pope thinks about the climate?
I do.
Sure, I understand.
Because we owe the entire climate movement shit to the papacy.
Sure.
Starting with John 23. So, yeah, I care. I don't care. I say it in other programs, but I never discussed this with you. I don't care about the nature of the transubstantiation. Catholics believe that in the Eucharist, the wine and the host are not become, not look like it, not represent, but are the blood of the body of Christ. Fine. Others don't, and call it the Lord's Supper because it's just a moment where the brethren can break bread together without any kind of transubstantiation. In those things, if I care, nobody will ever know because I don't discuss that publicly. It is my own self-imposition not to enter into and not to reveal my own beliefs in this matter, except when I'm among friends and where the conversation flows naturally. I don't believe in imposing religious beliefs, nor do I take it kindly when they are imposed on me. My beef with the papacy has nothing to do with matters of faith or liturgy, and everything to do with questions politic.
Yeah, I mean, my own personal deal is that I separate the Vatican. I separate actually clerics from Catholicism, which sounds like a well, it doesn't sound like it's rational, but
It is.
Catholicism to me is a collection of beliefs, and to me, I always went to mass as a child. I stopped when I was 18. To me, the most difficult part of the mass to get through was the homily by the priest. Everything else is regimented. You come in, you say a prayer that you say at the same time every day. You stand, you sit, you kneel, you do all of this, and then the only thing that is not regimented is when the priest gives his homily. And that was, to me, the hardest thing to get through because I wasn't interested in anything the priest would have to say about anything. And I always separated, like the Vatican, okay? Breitbart had huge red letters. Habeas, what is it? Habeas papum.
Abemus papam.
Abebus papam.
Which I changed to Abemus globalistum.
Well, it didn't matter to me that this is the first American Pope. He's from Chicago. It's not something I'm interested in.
Keep going.
Well, I mean, the Vatican, I always separated the Vatican from Catholicism, which I know sounds crazy, but
Yeah.
to me, it just had nothing to do with the belief system of Catholicism.
Well, I'll give you why you are right. This is Rerum Novarum, and this is straight from the Vatican's own website, so that nobody can claim that it's been in any way adulterated.
Whoa, the rights and duties of capital and labor?
Oh, because this is the encyclical of Pope Leo XIII on capital and labor.
Good Lord.
And it starts with that. Now, we're not going to read this shit now. And we're not going to comment on every one of its absurdities. But I wanted to give you a sample because it starts with a stern condemnation of socialism, which may lead some people to say, yeah, I agree with them. And then there's an equally stern condemnation of capitalism, what he calls unbridled capitalism. And ends up with the third position, the solution to the quandary, and the Christian solution, which would be an alliance of capital, labor, and industry and the state in a highly regulated capitalism where the rights of property are guaranteed, but the companies have to perform within the parameters imposed by the state in association with workers' unions and employers' unions. Does that ring a bell?
Yeah, that's from the National Socialist 25 points.
Oh, and before the 25 points from Carta di Lavoro, this is the basis for Giovanni Gentile and Benito Mussolini's fascism. Now, look at this. There is another and deeper consideration which must not be lost sight of. As regards to the state, the interests of all, whether high or low, are equal. The members of the working classes are citizens by nature and by the same right as the rich. They are real parts living the life which makes up through the family, the body of the Commonwealth. And it need hardly be said that they are in every city very largely in the majority. It would be irrational to neglect one portion of the citizens and favor another. And therefore, the public administration must duly and solicitously provide for its welfare and the comfort of the working classes. Welfare and comfort of the working classes as a function of the state, my friend. Otherwise, that law of justice will be violated, which ordains that each man shall have his due. To cite the wise words of St. Thomas Aquinas, as the part and the whole are in a certain sense identical, so that which belongs to the whole, and all of this is to tell you that there has to be a welfare state.
Yeah, that's called socialism, and he says he doesn't like socialism.
No, but it's a commonality with fascism.
Yeah, see, this is why I separate the Vatican from Catholicism, because he's not talking about any belief system as it applies to the afterlife,
No,
the soul, heaven, hell, etc., etc.
no, he's talking about welfare state, socialism, regulation of capitalism. It has nothing to do with religion and less to do with Catholicism.
Didn't Christ say, "Render to Caesar that which belongs to Caesar"? Meaning,
Well, but he wasn't in the room when that was said, if you know what I mean.
well, but I mean, basically, that statement means you separate the church from the state. Correct?
It means that the state and the church have different functions.
Exactly.
And each must perform their own.
Exactly. And when we have a pope start telling us how how the state needs to run the country, then we're contradicting the word of Christ. And
by the way, I anticipated it, and now Leo XIV has actually explained it himself. The reason he picked the name is because of this Rerum Novarum. To me, that's almost a declaration of war.
Mm-hmm.
Or at the very least, a fair notice that war is coming.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care about all of the banalities and inanities that are said about him. The little bit that I started researching on the genealogical side out of sheer freaking curiosity is led me to, again, things have been half-baked, and he's painted as a Chicagoan of French and Spanish ancestry. Well, he was born in Chicago, and in that sense, he is a Chicagoan. His parents came from New Orleans. They were married in New Orleans and then moved to Chicago. His mother was born in New Orleans. Her father was Joseph Norval Martinez, who the census in New Orleans in 1900 describes as a black Haitian. And the birth certificate of his mother in Chicago describes as a man born in the Dominican Republic. God forbid he may be related to my wife. And in New Orleans, he married a gal who was a Creole mulatto. Have you noticed, by the way, that means nothing to me. He may be related to my wife, for all I know. But have you noticed how nobody mentions this?
Yeah, I mean,
They give the impression that he has a purely European ancestry, or that his ancestors came from Canada. Well, maybe the Prevost, I would believe that, but not the
mhm,
rest of them.
mhm.
And it turns out that
Well,
he has ancestors in the Dominican Republic, in Haiti, among the slave population in Louisiana, and he is as American as Papas a la Huancaína,
mhm,
because he chose to be a Peruvian 11 years ago.
mhm.
And he's a naturalized Peruvian citizen. Now, it's okay to say that he's a Peruvian American, but don't give me this shit about the first American Pope.
Well, I mean, Breitbart was like, is he a Red Sox fan or does he like, and it was like they're making it sound like he's what the hell was that writer's name from Chicago?
He is Obama
Yeah.
with a habit.
No, they make it sound like, oh, he's a Chicagoan, the city with the big shoulders, Chicago, one hell of a town.
It's your winner. The distributism says, I'm looking at the chat. Mussolini, yes, somebody got it there. Was Pope Leo the 13th against the Industrial Revolution? He was against progress of any kind. And he was particularly bleeding through the nose because he was a prisoner in the Vatican. You see, he was surrounded by those pesky liberal Republicans. When he riles against the liberals, a lot of conservatives in the US today say, oh, see, he didn't like liberals. No, asshole. Liberal was Jefferson for Leo the 13th. Liberal was Washington. Liberal was Garibaldi. People who advocated for Republican government were liberals. And he hated them with a passion because the papacy had just lost the Papal States to the Republic of Italy in 1871. Not 20 years before this thing was written. He was against the Industrial Revolution. He was against Republican governments. He went against liberalism as understood by Jefferson, Franklin, and Washington. And he proposed a different way that was somewhere between socialism, which he didn't like any more than I do, and capitalism, which he hated with passion, and came up with the Christian way of doing things that was essentially what would later become fascism. And not much later, mind you, 20 years later. One can say that he was instrumental in the design of fascism. Oof. So will the Pope will make Taco Tuesday official and Wednesday will be the Creole food? Probably. Except that taco is not a Peruvian thing. He'll make ceviche Tuesdays. And there is a video of him extolling the virtues of ceviche and cabrito seco, because apparently that's his favorite food. He spent 38 years in Peru.
There's a YouTube channel called Tasting History, and the guy who runs it, he basically makes historical recipes, and he gives you the historical background. It once took the cardinals more than 3 years to choose a pope, because it was a battle between two different powers who had given their cardinals the list of people who were verboten. And so they got there, and they basically sat around and did nothing for 3 years. And it got to the point where the villagers, or the townspeople rose up and they blockaded them, and they had them living on a diet only of bread and water. That didn't work. So then they took the roof off of the place where they were meeting. So they essentially were out in the elements. That didn't work. Finally, like, the military went in, and they ended up choosing somebody who like died in like 3 months. And everybody went, oh no, now they have to do it all again. And that time it took 2 years. And eventually they all the rules were changed by one of the popes who they chose. He changed all the rules to make it as streamlined as possible. And then his successor got rid of the streamlining rules. And then it took another 2 years to choose some pope. And then they brought back the rules, which are still used today. But yeah, the record for choosing a pope was 3 years. So
Celestine, sometimes even longer. It's an interesting thing because this guy, when they elected him pope, he tried to run away,
mhm.
and they forced him. Celestine, I think it was his name, and they forced him, and that's when he changed all the rules and then ran away.
Yeah, well, there's the recipe that this guy did was during one of the word conclave means conclave with key. So they were basically locked in. Yes. And
extra omnis.
But they got baby back ribs sometime in the 1400s, I believe, and it was roasted ribs with a grape musk sauce. So sounds really bizarre, but
but at the time, obviously they didn't meet at the Sistine Chapel because at one time they took the roof off.
Well, a chef named Scoppy wrote a book about what the cardinals ate and how they ate, and he drew illustrations of all the various carrying devices, and the food was each cardinal ate in his own little cubicle, and there were two tasting times. There was a official tasters after the food was made ready.
Sure.
Then there was another taster before the food was served, and anything that might contain a note was chopped up. So like a bird or a pie or something like that was essentially chopped to pieces. So it's just like this level of madness that just,
So they couldn't receive their mordida once inside.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, the level of corruption in everything and everywhere all at once. It's really amazing to me.
Yeah. Kelly is saying, what is the Augustine order of which he's a part of? He was the provincial. He was the great kahuna of the Augustine order, which is an order obviously based on the teachings of St. Augustine. And I will more than gladly discuss this with you, Kelly, at the VIP room, because otherwise we're going to turn into a kind of Catholic discussion forum, which I really don't want to. There are some tweets that this gentleman published,
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let me show you a couple, see how much you like. But before I show you the couple of those, I want, because we expounded for a bit longer than I calculated. And this Reus Navarro, the entire point of this thing, and I encourage you to read it. I'm going to put it in SQV. Is the role of government is to promote social justice
Hmm.
through the protection of rights, while the church must work to teach correct social principles and ensure class harmony. You like that?
No, I don't. I don't like it at all.
It's the origin of the welfare state notion, is the origin of all the crap that we've been suffering for generations. And I'm going to show you some of the tweets that this fine gentleman of the cloth is either written himself or retweeted, which is a way of making them his own, right?
Correct.
Okay. This one was written by an asshole with the handle, where the hell is that? Rocco Palmo. As Trump and Bukele use the Oval Office to laugh at Fed's illicit deportation of a U.S. resident, once an undocumented Salvadoran himself, now DC Auxiliary Evelo asks, do you not see the suffering? Is your conscience not disturbed? How can you stay quiet? They're talking about the deportation of a fucking criminal of the worst kind. But apparently, Prevost wanted us to feel compassion for Abrego Garcia.
A U.S. resident. He wasn't a U.S. resident. He was an illegal
No.
alien.
That too. But aren't you compassionate?
No.
They're good, neither am I.
I could barely understand what the hell that guy said. I'm surprised you were able to understand it.
Because I am familiar with retardés, which is the language used by these people. And there we go again. And in clear retardés, this guy
Okay,
is
a U.S. resident. Okay, once an
once an undocumented Salvadoran
himself, now DC Al plus Evilio. What the fuck does that mean?
Okay, this is an auxiliary to the Evelo is the surname is once an undocumented Salvadoran himself. Evelo, this guy, now
Who is Evelo?
an auxiliary bishop in DC,
Oh,
asks, "Do you not see the suffering? Is your conscience not disturbed? How can you stay quiet when they
okay.
say
So the cardinal in DC is a former illegal alien.
no, auxiliary bishop, apparently.
Whatever. That's like total. Reading that made me felt like I was losing my mind.
Okay,
That was like complete gibberish.
well,
I'm sure the provost retweeted it just because he wanted to get it off his page.
No, he wanted to show his support for people who claim compassion for
bully for him for understanding that gibberish.
Yeah.
J.D. Vance is wrong. Jesus doesn't ask us to rank our love for others. Okay.
Well, J.D. Vance never said it. This is a classic fallacy.
Sure.
Classic fallacy. First, you make up a statement, then you argue against the statement you just made up.
Yeah. It's called building a straw man.
Bingo. And that is what Prevost is doing in order to condemn J.D. Vance.
Yeah. No, I mean, the current pope would not have gotten the job unless he was approved by the late pope. That's all there is to it.
The late pope took him out of his bishopric in northern Peru 2 years ago, brought him to Rome, put him in charge of all the fucking bishops around the world, and made him a cardinal. And 2 years later, there he is. If he isn't Bergoglio's man, I don't know what the crap he is. I really don't know what he is. And here we go. Let me see. With the last one I'm going to show you today. There we go. And this is a post by Cardinal Kupich, reposted by Prevost. There is nothing remotely Christian, American, or morally defensible about a policy that takes children away from their parents and warehouses them in cages. This is being carried out in our name, and the shame is on us all. This was in 2018. He was complaining about the cages that Ocasio-Cortez used to cry at. He never said it about Obama.
Well, also we had no way of knowing if these kids were the actual children of the adults who were holding their hands.
Well, I don't want to, shall I say, abuse an old joke, but maybe he wanted those kids in his care.
Well, it's the whole thing is that how long did these kids stay in their cages?
I don't know, and I don't care. I don't know, and I don't care.
They're not warehouse.
They were kept safe in there.
Well, okay,
unlike Biden, who released them into the hands of traffickers to be sexually exploited.
Okay, there's nothing remotely Christian. That's irrelevant. It has nothing to do with anything. The state does not do things based on religion. American, yes, it is entirely American to separate illegal children from the illegal adults who brought them into the country by their own choice.
And cannot prove they were their parents.
Morally defensible, yes, it's completely morally defensible because otherwise the kids could conceivably, more likely than not, end up in the hands of traffickers. So this statement is nonsensical on every possible level.
I know. And this is the statement that Prevost retweeted.
Yeah.
That tells you all you need to know. That tells you all you need to know about this guy.
The older I get, the less patient I get with stupidity. And you can't be stupid.
I don't think
you can't be stupid and make responsible decisions on how the country should be run. You can't be stupid and
actually you cannot be a cardinal and opine as to how the country should be run.
Well, you shouldn't, obviously, but American religious leaders can't keep their goddamn traps shut. It's quite a thing.
We should start, Catholics, Baptists, Muslims, I don't care. We should start canceling their tax exemption, because if they want to act as political action committees, they should pay taxes like all political action committees.
Well, yeah, I mean, get the Vatican to help out the churches here.
Yep. Biden gave big bucks to the Catholic Church to help bring migrants without scrutiny, says Poser Index. And what did Obama do?
Yeah.
And what do you think we did during the first Trump administration? Because when all the hullabaloo was going on about the caravans and the caravans and the caravans, we were giving billions to Catholic charities. And now everybody's, oh my God, Catholic charities. We've been discussing this shit for 6 years, folks. Nobody has the right to be surprised in our audience. We pointed it out. We gave you the names. We gave you the amounts. And now, oh my God, Biden was doing that. Biden was doing that. Trump was doing that.
Well, what I would like to ask His Holiness and Cardinal Puchuch there where's the morality in creating this trail in which every single female, regardless of her age, is raped multiply, sometimes to the point of death, as she makes her way up to our border?
Yeah.
And every single male, regardless of age, is given the choice to either be a drug mule or join a cartel. Where's the morality in that?
Bend over, because they're raped too.
True. And of course, His Holiness would not have an answer. His Holiness would prevaricate and weasel his way out of answering that question.
Yes.
And then finally, I would ask him, where is the morality, Your Holiness, in creating a slave class in this country where people are required to wear adult diapers as they pluck chickens for giant chicken conglomerates because they're not allowed bathroom breaks, and they're paid pennies on the dollar in order to do this? Where's the morality in that?
How about the kids? And I consider 12 to 16-year-olds kids. I don't give a shit. How about the kids that are using construction?
Sure.
Doing incredibly dangerous work without proper equipment, without proper training. Working 16-hour days. Where's the morality in that? Where's the morality in not knowing where 350,000 kids went?
Well, okay, we go back to the Chinese approach to life. The Democrats don't care. The Catholic Church doesn't actually care. The new Pope doesn't actually care. He's got globalism on his mind. He's got a.
Oh, yeah.
You know what my communist brother once said? He said that he doesn't think of people in terms of individuals. He thinks of them in terms of enormous wads of people, of enormous wads of things that need to be herded in the right direction. That so the fate of the individual doesn't matter to him as much as the fate of this wad of biomass that must be herded in the proper direction. And if this part of the biomass refuses to go, then that part of the biomass is eliminated because it's problematic.
Yep.
And I'm sure the new cardinal thinks of humans as a biomass.
He thinks like that. I'm positive, and so does she.
Oh, of course, absolutely.
And so do the Democrats.
Yeah.
I'm sick and tired of trying to, whitewash the intrinsic perversity of these people. There is no whitewashing it. And then they turn around and they adopt, these anti-war statements that are as devoid of intellect as they are of morality. Oh, we shouldn't have a war. War is bad. Israel should get out of Gaza. Fortunately, we have people with balls well planted between their legs. The Houthis dropped a missile at Ben Gurion Airport.
Mm-hmm.
And they made a big hole in an orchard right on the outside of the airport. And the next day, this is what the Israeli Air Force did to the airport in Sana'a.
Oh boy. Why did we do that? We were so stupid.
Look at that. And if you look carefully, you can see the remains of planes mangled with the
shit
over there.
Well, do you know why the Houthis agreed to stop attacking American ships?
Because they can't.
Remember at the beginning, before we went on the air, you were listening to the show I was listening to.
Yeah.
I told you that those guys started out good and it all went to their heads. They said that the American air campaign against the Houthis wasn't working because you can't bomb an enemy into compliance.
Oh,
We
yes,
didn't-
you can.
Well, not you can, but what we did, we destroyed every single radar and communication network that the
Right.
Houthis had. The
Right.
Houthis today, the military, are communicating using civilian cell phones.
Yes.
That's all they have left.
And with everybody listening in.
Once
And
Once-
then the Israelis can do this.
once everything, all the radar and everything had been destroyed, we sent in the A-10 Warthogs at low level to kill the Rocketeers. The Houthis built these special, in mountains and things, they built these special holes that they would back their missile truck into. But they always gave their missileers a 20-minute warning over civilian cell phones. So the A-10, which was hovering overhead with the KC-135 tanker, allowing it to hover indefinitely, they would have 20 minutes to come in, and the rocket or the missile truck would come out of the cave, and it would be hit with a burst of 30 millimeter fire from the A-10 Warthog. And then the missileers, once the missileers figured out what was happening, they started abandoning their missiles. So then the A-10 would identify their little Toyotas. The only people in Yemen who have cars are the Houthis.
White Toyota pickups. Yes.
Any car you hit in Yemen has Houthis in it. We don't,
Yeah.
as a matter of course, destroy all cars, but we could.
We should.
And so we hit all the cars of the fleet. Every car we hit was filled with trained missile crew who were trained by the IRGC from Iran. That was when the IRGC started to retreat, because the Houthis had been reduced to using cell phones. And as you know, a cell phone can be picked up by
Well, it can be lit in a half a second.
Exactly. So that was the air campaign. The air campaign was not us flying over and dropping bombs. The air campaign was very well thought out.
And destroying the SAMs, destroying all of the air defenses, destroying all of their launchers, which to a large state we accomplished. These incursions of, they announced, the U.S. announces that it won't bomb the Houthis anymore, and the next day Israel destroys Sana'a Airport, Hodeidah, and 50 other targets, because right now they can go in and out whenever they freaking want without a worry. So screw those idiots and screw people who don't understand how these things work. It's the same like all the freaking imbeciles that for the past 10 days have been pestering the world with their wordings that Trump was upset with Bibi Netanyahu. He had banned him from the White House. He doesn't want to deal with him. He doesn't want to deal with Netanyahu. He doesn't want to this. He doesn't want to that. Listen, Trump and Netanyahu are very good friends. Honest to goodness friends. Trump admires Netanyahu, perhaps because Netanyahu, like his brother, and before even his brother, was a soldier in a rescue of hostages.
Mhm.
Successful one, I might add, where they pretended to be airport service employees, and they managed to get into the cabin through the landing gear and killed the male hijackers, captured the female hijackers, and freed all the hostages. In that operation, Bibi took a bullet in his arm and kept on fighting. It's like he didn't even realize he had a bullet in his arm until the operation was over. A few years later, his brother died in Entebbe, rescuing hostages again. He knows what he's doing. He knows what he's talking about. He has an intimate relationship with terrorism, like many of us do. that makes us intransigent and adamant that this evil must be destroyed. And Trump understands that. So they can try to break the relationship between the U.S. Oh, yeah. Another one. Trump was going to have a nuclear deal with Saudi Arabia over the objections of Israel. And he was working on a nuclear deal with Iran that roughly mimics that of Obama. Bullshit. Bullshit on steroids. Screw them all. What I think is going to happen is that all of this is consequence of people fearing that an attack on Iran is imminent, and I hope it is.
Well, the Saudis would not agree to a nuclear deal against Israel's wishes because the Saudis are depending on Israel to be the muscle of the region. The Abraham Accords, there's what, 40 countries waiting to sign on the Abraham Accords?
I know for a fact 13.
At some point, everybody in the region is going to recognize Israel's right to exist. And Israel is going to be, okay, the Iranians, for example, not the mullahs, but the people, the only country who they trust to overthrow the mullahs with military force are the Israelis, because they know that the Israelis are the only country who would unambiguously do it in the defense of Israel and would have no desire to
everybody else.
Exactly. That the Israelis are fellow Middle Easterners. This is what everybody forgets, is that Israelis are Middle Easterners and they understand the Middle East. So I don't see the Saudis agreeing, and I don't see Trump going to the Saudis and saying, we need to make this deal in spite of what Israel thinks. I just don't see that happening.
No. That's why I'm saying this all lunacy. I noticed that after many, many, many years of you and I speaking rather unabashedly about the fifth column, the pseudo-conservatives, the little pink pussy hats that pretend to be MAGAs. I noticed that Mark Levine is now doing it too.
Mm-hmm.
And he refers to him in words that you and I have used years ago, calling them a fifth column.
Mm-hmm.
And he's furious with them for good reason. And these fifth column anti-war pink pussy hat pseudo conservatives are the only ones who buy this bullshit. Not even the Democrats buy this bullshit about the split between Netanyahu and they do it because this fifth column are, among other things, rabid anti-Semites.
Of course.
All of them.
Well, it's fascinating how utterly equal Candace Owens and Nick Fuentes and they're all identical. They all say exactly the same things. They all think exactly the same things. They never say anything that surprises you. Okay, there's some actor, I forgot his name. He was a rabid anti-Trumper. I mean, you know, he'd make these close-up screaming videos, fuck Trump. He's Jewish. And when
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah. When the country when the country began seeing all these rabid kill the Jew protests, he started getting really nervous.
He started to question.
And then he admitted that Trump wasn't insane, that Trump wasn't a fascist. Then he ended up voting for Trump. And so he surprised everybody.
Michael
Owens, pardon me?
Was it Michael Rappaport?
Yes. And so he was capable of surprising everybody. I didn't think he was capable of surprising anybody. I thought he was just a kind of rote Hollywood blah 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 blah, like you name the actor, they're like that. So he surprised me. Candace Owens has never surprised me. I always knew she had a problem with Jewish people. I always knew that. She let it be known almost from the beginning. And to hear that she's now a flat earther, again, nothing surprises me.
Why should it surprise you?
Yeah, it goes hand in hand with Jew hate. It's
Yep.
And okay, a few months back, these people were all JFK assassination conspiracy theorists. Now they've all shut their yap on that because the documents have all been released and there's nothing there. There's nothing there.
No,
I could have told him that.
actually, we did. We did say there's nothing new to find out. You're going to read 10,000 documents and you're not going to find anything. The same thing will happen with the 9/11 Commission.
Mhm.
There's nothing to release, Building 7 and all that shit. All of the shit has been studied down to the molecular level and has been published. And if there is any document that was held back, perhaps because it included names that would inadvertently tell bad guys who to target next, will eventually be made known, and you're going to find out that after all, we did know everything there was to know.
Well, it was during the Obama administration that
I'm sorry, our Navy guy is a flat mooner. I suppose that comes after the fourth pier.
Say it again.
Our Navy guy, the one that was in the USS America, he's a flat mooner. Not a flat earther.
A flat mooner, yes.
Yeah, which I believe probably.
Yeah, no, I agree. The moon is
fourth pier level.
The moon is it's approximately this thick, and during the Obama administration, I was writing a book on World War I flamethrowers, and there was an article that was held in the National Archives, and I wrote off to get a copy of it. It was written by the U.S. Army, and they wrote back and they said I would have to file a Freedom of Information Act request. Yep. All right, so I did, and it was turned down because they said I could use this information for terrorism. So I found the same article in a different government institution, and they sent it to me. And when I looked at it, it was the history of flamethrowers in World War I, and there was literally nothing technical in it. There was nothing. There were no blueprints on how to build a flamethrower. There was nothing technical. There were a couple photos, but it was literally just the Germans did this, the French did this, the Italians did this, the British did this, the Russians did this, and I just thought, how utterly stupid! How utterly stupid! The article was written almost 100 years ago at that time. 90 something years ago, and it contained absolutely no technical material whatsoever, but they denied me from the National Archives, so I got it from what the hell is it? It's a university, Washington University. No.
Oh yeah, there is a Washington University.
University of Washington, is that in DC?
That's a different thing. Washington University, there is.
Which is the one in DC?
Hold on, yeah, because it's Washington's. Washington State is the one in
on the West Coast.
On the West Coast, Washington University, there is one in DC.
Yeah, that's the one where I got the exact same article from, and they sent it to
Yeah.
me without any problems. So the National Archives wouldn't.
Now, it all depends on which is the asshole that takes your request. Unfortunately, all of those requests are registered. So if you request it again, the next one is going to give you the same answer because it's already been requested. You have to try it with a different email and name.
It's so retarded. It's just so
I know.
ridiculous.
No, notice that I just gave you a trick that I'm not going to say whether I have ever used it or not, but it kind of works to go around the morons. There is one. I'll tell you one. National Archives. There are the papers of Caspar Weinberger.
Mhm.
Um, I was pointed in the general direction by Les Filotas, who was he was the author of the uh, dissenting report at the Canadian Aviation Safety Board back in 85, 86 actually, over the Arrow Air bombing in Gander. And he pointed me to the possibility that the Weinberger papers have some information, and he has a very good reason to assume that. So you request the papers to see the papers, the Caspar Weinberger collection at the National Archives. Of course, they're not going to send you shit, but they're going to let you go in and take a look. So they answer that those papers are there uh, by courtesy of the Caspar Weinberger estate. So in order to look at them, you need permission from the Weinberger estate to say fine. And after 7 or 8 months, you get the Weinberger estate to finally give you an authorization. Okay, first they're going to ask you, why do you want to use these for? Because they don't want to give you access if you're going to badmouth Casper. So you get the authorization to see the thing. So you go back to the Library of Congress. Finally got the authorization to see the papers. Oh, good. Do you have a top secret security clearance?
Mhm.
Well, no, I don't, but I came in with my friend here who has. Oh, well, but he didn't make the request, did he? So now he needs to get the authorization from the Weinberger estate and come
But then,
back.
but then you can't see them, right? Because you don't have the TSI.
I mean, this is when you add to this that the FBI investigation that was never done was classified for 75 years. It's like, give me a fucking break, man. And we haven't even touched the surface. For all the hullabaloo about Elon Musk and Dodge and this and that, we haven't touched the freaking surface.
Mhm.
This goes deeper than anybody thinks. And it's worse than anybody can imagine.
Mhm.
Even now, George Washington University, Deb, is not what we're talking about. That is the Jesuit school in Georgetown.
Mhm.
It's a completely different shit, by the way. Going back to this, all of these magatards, all of these fifth column of anti-war morons, have you noticed are going full steam against uh, Kirsten Nowen?
Mhm.
how about oh God,
Pam
Pam
Bondi.
Bondi.
Yeah, Pam
Oh
Bondi.
my God.
I heard a guy say that while it may be plausible that the Justice Department is going over the Epstein papers with a fine-tooth comb in order to make sure that no innocent person's name is put out there, he still wants it put out there. And it's like, but you just explain why
Right.
it's taking longer than you want it to take. And anyway,
And even the guilty ones. Do you have any idea what making all of these public would do to potential prosecutions?
you broke up. I didn't hear that part.
Yeah. Do you have any idea what releasing all of this shit would do to potential prosecutions?
Well, also, what is this obsession that this stratum of conservatives has with underage sex?
Because
It's like
they are wannabe child molesters.
it's shocking. They want to see people in handcuffs, and it's like, okay, a shitload of people are dead. They've died. B, you're never going to see them in handcuffs because if they find, okay, they're not going to find dead bang evidence. Epstein did not write down, today Bill Clinton did this with a 15-year-old. He didn't write that down. You're not going to find anything like that. But if you do find some sort of evidence against somebody, that guy is going to hire lawyers who are going to delay this for 15 years
or more.
So,
and if you release the documents beforehand, it's prejudicial. It taints the jury pool, and they're gonna get an acquittal too.
One of the worst murderers in this country was part of a duo, and he was from Hong Kong. His name was Charles Ng, and Charles Ng and his partner kidnapped entire families and murdered them and sexually abused them and filmed it all. And when they were captured, the non-Charles Ng guy committed suicide with a cyanide capsule, and Charles Ng fled to Canada. Well, it took years to get him back from Canada because the Canadians wanted to make sure that he would not face the death penalty because it hurts us. When he finally got to California, he delayed his trial for more years by firing his lawyers. He delayed everything. He delayed. And then the trial itself was the longest trial in the history of California. And he ended up, I think he got the death penalty, but California has put a moratorium
on it. You don't
on
execute him anyway.
Yeah. So that was a guy who was probably, if not retarded, at the very least autistic. Just imagine what the toppest, the most skilled lawyers on the face of the earth could do with an Epstein case in terms of delaying
with the unlimited resources of a billionaire who wants to keep his name out of it.
Exactly. So
you're giving me that example. Let me give you another one of a more peaceful time where our Republican values were more intact. Say the late 1860s, early 1870s. People think that John Wilkes Booth killed Abraham Lincoln and that was it. Nothing could be farther from the truth. There was a plot to decapitate the US government. The same night, attacks were made on the Secretary of State,
the Vice President,
or the Vice President. And
the Secretary of Navy, or sorry, the Secretary of War.
Navy. Yeah, the Secretary of War I just mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
And all of this was hatched at the pension of a Mary Surratt. It was a pension for Catholic gentlemen in DC, where all of these people got together and hatched the plot. And in some cases, they managed to send their victims to the hospital with a number of knife wounds. In one case, the guy shat his pants and left just as he was about to attack the Secretary of War. And then came the hand down of the members of this conspiracy, which was, by the way, very much supported by the Vatican in many ways. The survivors, those who were immediately caught, ran to hide in a monastery in Quebec, and from then found other routes to exile. Mary Surratt, the woman in whose pension, in whose little hotel the plot was hatched, was, I believe, one of the few women who were executed by the federal government.
Mhm.
Her son, John Surratt, who was considered to be the leader of the gang, escaped to a monastery in Montreal, from where he eventually was expedited to Rome, where he hid in the Swiss Guard. He was recognized by an American consul in Rome, and they demanded that the Vatican extradite him. The Vatican refused to. But eventually, after much pressure, much haggling, the Vatican accepted it and promised to deliver Surratt to the consul. And on the evening prior to that delivery, Surratt managed to escape the Vatican, and he was eventually arrested in Alexandria, Egypt, and brought back to the US. And by now, tempers had calmed down, years had passed, and this son of a bitch managed a hang jury. You could say that the guy who organized the assassination of Abraham Lincoln escaped the news, or jail for that matter. So, what can you expect of somebody with resources in a present day scandal? Our system has got more holes than a Gruyere cheese, man. And I don't believe we should plug them, by the way. I still believe that we should let 100 guilty men go free rather than jail an innocent. I do believe that. You know, they can shoot me for it. Bundy said there are thousands of Epstein videos. Yes. You'll be so disappointed when they're made public, you have no idea.
Yeah, I honestly don't believe that. Okay, from what I've learned of Epstein, and I didn't study him very much, what mattered to Epstein was hobnobbing with the rich and famous. Neither Epstein nor whatever the hell her name is in prison.
Ghislaine Maxwell. Ghislaine Maxwell.
Yeah, I don't think I don't think it was in their interest to videotape their friends comporting with underage girls, because that sort of thing couldn't be kept secret. And once the word got out that Epstein was collecting material like that, he would have been a marked man in either socially or literally
or
physically. So Epstein was a pervert, but okay. I saw an interview with some member of royalty. She had a Vaughn in her name, but she speaks English with an American accent. And she said she never liked Epstein. And when asked why, she said, because I always thought of him as a Goomba from Queens. And she said, call me a snob. I am. And That's what he was. He wanted to hobnob with royalty. He wanted to hobnob with politicians. He wanted to hobnob with world shakers. And I don't think it was, and Maxwell had the same need. Maxwell was the daughter of Robert Maxwell, who was a newspaper
billionaire, newspaper tycoon, and spy.
And he and his daughter were abnormally close. He named his boat after her, and he died naked.
Well, do we know that? He disappeared from his boat. I don't think they ever found him.
Yeah, they found him. He was naked and floating. And, the claim was that he was in the habit of getting up at night and going to pee off the rail, and he lost his balance and fell in. So they did find him. But all these people, you wouldn't believe how important it is for the rich and famous to never be excommunicated by the rich and famous.
Yep.
Even someone like Kanye West, who has shat in his nest in a way that almost nobody of his stature has ever done.
He just took a big crap on his breakfast table. The man is gone forever.
Well, he just made a video of black men standing in a line dancing, and the only lyric to the entire song is N-word say Heil Hitler, and then they all give the Hitler salute. So even that guy is very angry that he's been excommunicated. So for Epstein and Maxwell to risk being excommunicated, now these people will stab each other in the back, they'll gossip, they'll do all this stuff. But, okay, for one thing, I don't believe that Epstein had this nest where people would come and comport with underage girls, because that was way the hell too risky, not only for him, but also for them. But
to pass around the latest floozy wouldn't even be original.
I do believe that he made arrangements.
Yeah.
But those people would meet on their own. I don't believe that Epstein had this harem of young women on his island.
No, I just met this girl. You have no idea the wonderful things she does. Why don't you give her a call?
Exactly. That's what they do. That's what they do. And
I could hear him.
There was a movie director who he made some movie that made it really big, and from that point on, he started immediately going down. And I saw an interview with a guy who, the guy was a partier, and he would show up on set high, and he was gay, and he was attracted to underage gay, what are known as twinks. And so this I saw an interview with a guy who went to one of the parties, and he said that this director would always arrive at the party with an entourage of men in their 60s and 70s who were high as kites, and all they wanted was the twinks. Get me the twinks. And the twinks were all 15 and 16-year-olds. They were fully aware of what they were doing, and they were eager to do it because of the financial gain and the hobnobbing with the rich and famous that it would garner them. And so the guy who was giving the interview, he said, he had to get the hell out of Dodge. And this director, whose name I can't remember, and I probably shouldn't even say it anyway, he crashed and burned early. He was one of those people who had all this promise, and he just, because he lost himself in drugs and underage gay sex. And this was all done out in the open. and everybody knows about it. Think about Epstein. How many people are there out there who were eyewitnesses to parties on Epstein Island with very famous people and underage girls? How many people were actually there and are telling us about it? Nobody. There's literally nobody.
And the one girl who was telling us about it lied about Dershowitz.
She lied about Dershowitz, and she was mentally ill. Do you remember she suddenly announced that she had 4 days to live?
Yeah.
And then okay, she died, and there were all these conspiracy theories. Her family said she committed suicide. She left a note. Here's the note.
Yeah. Anyway, enough of these things. Let's go for the last subject before we have to cut it out today. And this is an interesting one. Without support from China and other authoritarian regimes, Russia would never have been able to continue this war. This is from General Rob Bauer in NATO. He made the comments, because of the visit of Xi Jinping in Red Square, and claimed that is a signal that the forces of evil are aligning. By the way, the evil, I would say evil fucking losers, because the heads of state at Red Square was like a who's who of loser, broken countries: Venezuela, Cuba, Serbia. I mean, really, more than an axis of evil is an axis of idiot. According to this guy in NATO, he is the big kahuna in NATO right now. Russia has completely shifted to a wartime economy, but this hasn't changed the battlefield reality. Moscow is sustaining huge losses for very minor tactical gains. None of its strategic objectives have been achieved. He praised Ukraine. Ukrainians are doing remarkably well at holding the line. That fact alone terrifies Russia's backers more than they admit. I think this guy is hitting it on the nail. Do you?
Yeah. I mean, okay. Just a second. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I saw the May Day parade, and all the tanks were the T-62 model because
they don't have anything else left.
They don't have anything else, and Russia has shifted to a full-time wartime economy, and all the funds are being stolen by Putin, by his cronies, by the factory owners, by everybody. So
yep.
It doesn't matter.
They don't make a fucking tank.
Yeah. They're sending men on crutches to the front. Chinese help hasn't translated. The Chinese gave them golf carts that they took out on the battlefield. God help them, and the center of gravity was so high that if the vehicle didn't fall over on its own, it was an easy target.
Yep.
The Chinese gave them body armor that the Ukrainians were shown that they were holding a helmet up, and then they were hitting their fists through the Chinese helmet. I think the Chinese are supplying uniforms made in the Russian pattern. I think the Chinese supplied. They must not have
oil.
Oil, yeah.
Yeah, and they pay for the oil in yuan.
In yuan, yeah. So Russia has.
You know what Russia can do with those yuan?
Yeah. Okay, NATO is schizophrenic because the Europeans are still slow walking everything. Where are the F-16s you promised Ukraine? Where are they? You promised 2 squadrons.
Still waiting, my friend.
Still waiting. Why the hell?
Actually, they did receive about 8 to 12. Not what was promised was up to about 40. They've received about 8 to 12, and now the U.S. has sent 3 of them in parts to be used as parts,
Mhm.
but not anywhere near what was promised or Ukraine needed 2 years ago.
Well, think about it. The anti-aircraft, it's called a self-propelled artillery gun, Gepard. It's a German vehicle that has these 2 automatic cannons, and it goes brap, brap. It's incredibly effective in shooting down drones, but the ammunition is made only by Switzerland, which refuses to sell the ammunition directly to Ukraine.
Yep.
Why would you do that? Why would you do that?
Because you had that shit laying around.
Yeah.
And you didn't want to help Ukraine, so give them that shit, see if they can find ammunition, and we can say that we're helping.
Well,
remember, Germany at the beginning didn't want to help at all.
Exactly.
When they started helping, all they had was 5,000 used helmets.
The only reason Ukraine was not defeated initially was because of the Javelin missiles that Trump had given them during his first term.
Yes.
So don't ever let anybody tell you that Trump, okay, all the European channels that I used to watch, I don't watch anymore, because when Trump became president, they started spewing their pin-headed hatred all over the place. Yes. And nothing they predicted about Trump came true, but none of them said, you know what, I was wrong. So screw them. I'm not watching them anymore. Europeans are not mentally capable. It's bizarre to think that somebody is literally incapable of seeing Trump as he really is. Like their brain will not make that. It's incapable of seeing this guy as he really is. And
they never saw Reagan as he really was.
That's true. That's true.
This is a congenital problem. And okay, fuck him, because the world is changing. We're gonna have Simeon as president of the government in Romania in just about a few short weeks. In the elections in Romania, they have, same as the French and same as I believe California, the ballotage, the 2 rounds. Everybody and their mothers goes to the first round. Only the 2 most voted candidates go to the second round, and you need over 50% to win. If you get over 50% of the first round, there is no second. The guy who won the first round was Carlin Georgescu, with 34%, the largest party, AUM. And Europeans didn't freaking like it, so they annulled the election. It has to be done all over again. And it was the European Commission that decided, do it over. As they were getting ready to do it over, Georgescu was again leading the polls. So they prescribed him. He cannot be a candidate. And very democratic tendencies in Europe. At the moment he was forced to retire from the race, Georgescu appointed Simeon as his replacement in the ticket. Simeon just won the first round with 42% of the vote.
Yeah. So the Europeans shot themselves in the foot.
Oh, and it's looking for the second round.
Mm-hmm.
Because one of the 2 socialist parties decided not to endorse the other and leave people to vote their conscience, which is a lovely way of, we wish we could endorse Simeon, but since we can't, we endorse no one.
Mm-hmm.
Simeon is leading the polls now 62
Hmm.
to 38 or some idiotic number like that. It's like he's going to wipe his ass
Hmm.
with the socialist. Um, they are trying the same thing they did in France. Um, they managed to get a court to proscribe Marine Le Pen.
Hmm.
By the way, she won not the appeal, but she won the release of the proscription pending the appeal, which is what should have been done in the first place, except that lawfare is not an exclusive property of the Democrats. So now Marine Le Pen is no longer proscribed since yesterday. But they're trying. They're trying through lawfare. They're doing to the right in Europe what they did to Trump here.
No, and this will result in Le Pen getting more votes.
Absolutely, more than she ever dreamt of.
Hmm.
Because a lot of people are saying, no, you cannot fucking do this. And they're going to go towards Le Pen, towards Simeon, towards Abascal in Spain, towards Meloni. I think she's the only prime minister that has grown so much in popularity after being elected in 2 years in government.
Yep.
It's amazing what she's doing. So and of course, you know, the socialists are self-destroying.
Well,
Uh,
Maloney is governing responsibly and with common sense.
yes.
She's
And
not gone crazy.
remember all the things they told us that she was going to do.
Hmm.
And I think you and I commented jokingly, all she has to do is not shit herself and she'll be a hero. Because they're prognosticating such a monster that unless she grows fangs and eats babies, everybody's going to be relieved. And when they are, they're going to go to her camp.
Hmm.
That's what's happening.
Well, she's also getting results. She's like Trump in that she's showing all this stuff that they told you was impossible to fix is actually fixable. So,
Yes,
you know,
and it wasn't that difficult. Um, I love it because we got a bunch of comments on China buying resources and all that. Just these people don't get it. China is kaput, my friend. And whatever kind of deal they make with some impoverished country with a GDP per capita of $200 or something, good fucking luck.
well,
It's going to be useless.
you could start sending in C-117 Galaxy transports full of cash to the Chinese, and it wouldn't help them at this point.
Mm. I love this when somebody says in our chat, Perot spoke the truth about NAFTA. NAFTA didn't exist at the time. Perot split the conservative vote in this country so that Clinton could walk into the White House with 40% of the vote. Go and fucking thank him for his services.
Well, he also did it twice.
Hmm? I
He
can't
did it
believe
twice.
yeah, he did it twice. I can't believe that people fall for this shit over and over again.
Well,
It's like
remember,
to be stupid.
remember, where was it? Was it in 2018? On the East Coast somewhere, maybe Delaware or something? They decided to run the craziest sort of like
2010.
2000. No, it was
yeah. I'm not a witch. I'm not a witch.
No. This was our side. Our side decided they were going to run some retired Air Force colonel who was off his rocker, and he had zero chance of being elected on the East Coast, and everybody was saying, well, he's not a rhino, and we can't run a rhino. And
no, that too. Yeah. I got it because they didn't do it once. In 2010, we had a former governor in Delaware who was polling 60% for senator. He was the shoe-in. And in the primary, they threw him out of a window and put a stupid cow.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a witch,
Mm-hmm.
O'Donnell. And a Senate seat that was a shoe-in for Republicans ended up in Democrat hands because nobody could vote for that idiot. We do that all the time. They did the same thing in Alabama in 18, remember?
Mm-hmm.
We had a not perfect candidate, but somebody who worked and was working with Trump. And we ended up with a Democrat
Mm-hmm.
because people are stupid. And of course, the next time around, they replaced him with a Republican because unless you pick an obviously unelectable son of a bitch, Republicans will win in Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, not Admiral Stockdale, says somebody here. I think you are talking about Admiral Stockdale.
No, this guy was some rabble rouser. He was running around like a TV pastor on, running up and down the stage, just going zip top daddy bunda, and he was so off-putting that I can't remember his name, but you and I talked about it at the time. We were talking about how utterly stupid it was because he was not going to be elected, and rather than choose somebody who was palatable for the tastes of New Englanders, they decided they were going to go for a guy who ended up with 26% of the vote or something.
Deranged. Anyway, as usual, we're going to have a few things left in the ink well. So let me remind people who are watching this, if you have followed this program for 3 hours, and I've seen the numbers, and we started with 400, we're now with about 900 watching. Not bad for midnight on the East Coast. And you obviously like us. I don't know if we inform, entertain you, or both, or if you just love to hate us. Either way, you can only keep us on air by supporting this channel. I know we're not getting money from Soros. Amnesty International refused to contribute. The campaign of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez told us to go live in a holding camp for illegal aliens, and we don't have any government support, corporate support. We don't collect data. The only way that we can continue this is with support from our viewers. So please, pretty please, don't be stingy and send us $5. You can do that by getting a subscription on at the Blather in on X. That's a $5 per month subscription, $1 per show, and you're making your contribution. If everybody watching us sent $1, I wouldn't be talking to you anymore about this disgraceful thing. And the other way is to send a one-time or a monthly contribution to quadverum.com/support us. I'm afraid if you're in Odyssey, the support and money clicks don't work because those fucking socialist leprechauns who own Stripe pull the rug from under Odyssey, and until they find a solution to the merchant service provider issue, that avenue is closed. So please send us a donation to quadverum.com/support us monthly or one time, and or subscribe to at the Brother Lie, and you'll keep us flush enough to continue doing this thing until we figure out another way. Please, 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 don't force us to go begging for money to a government, because we shall not do it. I think that both Thomas and I would rather drink milk with ground glass than get any kind of government support from anybody. No USAID, says Home Sweet Home. None at all. None at that. None from the Communist Party of China. Zero from Russia Today, Sputnik, or any of the other Russians that seem to be keeping half of the news agency of this country alive. So fuck them all. We're not going to do that. And with that, is there a subject that we wanted to touch and we didn't? I know there was something that we're skipping over. Oh, no UNRWA either. Look at me. And just in case somebody wants to go and get us some UNRWA support, I'm Israel High, motherfuckers. I made a promise and I keep my promises. We knew this was going to be long wars.
Mm-hmm.
We knew this was going to be painful.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing I didn't see coming was the level of stupidity in America. I saw the anti-Semitism in Europe and the US, but the level of stupidity in America, I never expected a large chunk of Trump supporters and people who call themselves Republicans be so adamantly stupid when it comes to defending the US and its allies from these goat fuckers.
Well, there's always
Never-
been an isolationist vein in this country. We were isolationists before both world wars. We're under the delusion that if we leave the world alone, the world will leave us alone. And the only way the world will leave us alone is if we become a third world nation with no armed forces and no economy.
Yeah.
But
well, it's the same. Emery is saying over there in the chat. It's the same shit as the Birchers, the John Birch Society.
Mm-hmm.
They're still alive and well and fucking things up.
Mm-hmm. No, I want people to remember something. We were isolationist before World War I. To date, there are only two countries in history that were ever the victim of biological weapons used in wartime. One is China, and the second is the United States. The Germans used bioweapons on us in 1915 before we joined the war in 1917 after the Germans resumed unrestricted submarine warfare and after they tried to get Mexico to start a war with us. So we took all those things. We took the biological warfare. We took the Germans blew up the Black Tom Harbor in New Jersey. And that's the reason why the Statue of Liberty torch has been closed since 1916, because the bomb did structural damage that cannot be repaired. So we were isolationist. We were happy campers, and we got bioweapons. We got bombs. We got the Germans trying to get Mexico to. The Mexicans did launch raids into the United States at the behest of the Germans. And so finally we declared war on Germany, and that was that. So, and then we're isolationist in before World War II. What did we get? Pearl Harbor. And then on the 11th.
How about the Non-Intervention Club in the Spanish Civil War?
Yeah, in December 11th, Hitler declared war on us when we'd done literally nothing to Germany. So, when you're an isolationist country, you still have enemies, and they will come for you. So,
yep, that is true. There is no place to hide, and they are coming for you. So we better shake this bullshit. See, Willem Patcham. Remember that one?
Mm-hmm.
parabellum. If you want peace, prepare for war.
Mhm.
If you don't prepare for war, all of your peace-loving dancing around the fire is not going to be enough to stop the enemy.
Mm-mm.
The Germans financed the Bolsheviks in Russia. That is true. That is true.
They also shipped Lenin in.
They put him in a train and with the condition that he never opened the window or step out of the train while going through Germany.
Mhm.
Assholes. But anyway, if Debbie's asking me to whom is that directed, and I have to say, because I answered one of her things, but a little later, she was saying that we are not receiving money from Catholic NGOs as well. To which I replied, "Vade retro, Satana." Uh, I think she thought it was about her. No, it's about the Catholic NGOs. We don't get any money from there either. And I think one of these days we may get some anathemas from them. I intend to never slow down in my condemnation of their work south of the border. Um, so that's it. I'm done. Um, and, if there's anything I left off, I still have quad meet tomorrow at 10:30 p.m. Eastern, and we're going to be having a conversation with anybody who wants to come on screen and have a dialogue. Completely different thing. We're taking audience participation uh, on the steroid level. And that done, let me get the support this thing. Please don't forget, guys, to drop a buck or five. Subscribe in X. I'm thinking of doing this. By the way, if we get enough subscribers in X, start doing these programs in simulcast on Spaces. So that would be fun. It would provide for a lot of interaction. But you guys have to help us do it. Everybody else, thank you so much. And Thomas, do you have a last word for us today?
Habitude.
Habitude. Almost a French word in French. Habitude. And comme d'habitude, thank you so much, my friend. It's been a pleasure again. And I'll see you next week. Good night.